The United States Justice Department has announced it's not pursuing criminal charges against banking giant Goldman Sachs. The case focuses on a specific deal just before the subprime mortgage crash. In 2006, Goldman was buying lots of subprime mortgages from California. They were packing them up and selling them in one bundle to big investors. Some were considered safe, but some were risky because the homeowner had a poor credit rating or was borrowing the limit of what they could afford. A Senate panel found staff were describing them as junk and crap. Goldman Sachs was accused of privately knowing they were very risky, and it was accused of buying insurance, so it would get paid even if the homeowners stopped paying their mortgages. Well, US officials say the burden of proof to bring a criminal case cannot be met. So let's talk about this with Chris Roebuck in London. He's a visiting professor at Cass Business School and has held senior positions in UBS and HSBC banks. How would you describe what Goldman Sachs has been cleared of doing? Well, they're not going to face criminal charges.
No, and the issue there is it's the absolute classic issue of what are the standards you stick to when you do business? Is it that you'll do anything you can to make money as long as it's not illegal, or will you stick to some form of moral standard? And if we look at the way the Senate reacted, the senators were quite clearly saying, hang on, this doesn't make common sense. How can you have bad debt and bundle it up and it suddenly magically becomes good debt? And from the perspective of the man on the street, what they saw was effectively immoral behaviour. But although it might be immoral, it's technically not illegal.
So they were guilty basically of turning base metal into gold. I mean, whatever happened to caveat emptor?
Yeah. Well, I think that there needs to be an element here of, who is the emptor, who is the buyer. So to some degree, I think, yes, the buyer needs to beware, but in the case of Goldman Sachs, it's fair to say that many of the buyers were also other banks who were doing a similar thing themselves and pumping out this sort of product into the market, having repackaged it themselves. It's not to some degree as if you had an expert in the bank trying to pull the wool over the eyes of a member of the public who was not an expert.
Goldman employees reportedly sent emails describing the mortgage securities as junk and crap. They knew exactly what they were doing, didn't they? But they're not going to be punished for it. So once again, in the views and the eyes of the public around the world, the bankers have got away with it.
Absolutely, and that's the core question about leadership in these organisations. The leadership should be adopting a moral standard as well as a we're not going to end up in court standard. And to be blunt, this isn't just about banks. If you look at, for example, the policy of GSK in the US, selling drugs to people they weren't authorised to do it. If you look at the policies of other organisations, there are too many corporate leaders who think the standard should be as long as it's not illegal, we should do it. It should be, if you don't want this to be on the front page of the New York Times, then you shouldn't do it. And we need to get back to a more moral form of behaviour by large organisations.
Well, I look forward to that, but I'm not going to hold my breath. Chris Roebuck, many thanks.
I'm not holding my breath either.
Chris Roebuck, thanks for joining us from London.